Time to talk a little college basketball with the head coach of the BYU Cougars, Kevin Young. Coach, how are you?
Hey, Coach.
Hey, guys. How are you guys? I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
So excited to finally catch up with you, Coach. We've kind of missed each other in passing enough, so thank you for taking some time with us today.
Yeah, you bet, of course.
So when that portal closes, do you finally officially get able to take a breath of deep air and just be like, okay, I can calm down a little bit, or is it always just the old Wild West for you guys out there?
It's still pretty busy. I mean, the portal closing, obviously, it kind of caps, or it does cap who all can go in the portal, but everyone's still in the portal who hasn't signed, and we're still, there's a couple of spots where, we're still looking to fill, so we're still busy at work.
Coach, are you still riding the high of this last season, your first season with BYU and the success you had? Do you still taste it and feel the success, or is it all gone and it's all business for 25, 26 now?
Yeah, I mean, you really do move on, man. You got to, there's really no rest for the weary. I mean, that being said, it helps us tell our story, more now that we have a bit of a proof of concept, and, the stuff that we're trying to hang our hat on is, there's more proof of concept. So that part is I think, probably where that rears its head.
When you are in the middle of a season like that and you start out, slow in Big 12 play, and then that team caught fire, what do you attribute that to when that turnaround hit and you guys were able to go on the run you were able to hit?
Yeah, just the guys we had in our locker room, is a real testament to everybody buying into what we were doing. It just took a little while, for it to come together on one hand. On the other hand, I mean, look, outside of the first Houston game at Houston, I mean, the games we lost early in conference play were all by a possession or two, right? That, as you guys know, I mean, that's how fragile sports are. And so, that gave me confidence, and our guys confidence in just not getting too down. We didn't feel like we were too far away. And so, we made some adjustments and we did a couple of things, and the tide was able to turn. But really it was a testament to the guys just, staying positive and continuing to show up to work every day.
So, Coach, I'm still the kind of guy that can't sleep on Christmas Eve because I just am excited about Christmas. I get excited about things, and I got to know 25-26, what you've put together with A.J. Dybantsa coming in and being able to keep guys like Keba Keita and Dawson Baker and Boscovich. How excited are you to get this 25-26 season rolling?
Yeah, it's just really exciting. Obviously, AJ gets a lot of those headlines, but then you tack on, the return of Richie Saunders coming back is going to be, huge for our program. Adding, you lose Yegor and Dallin, and you bring Rob Wright in, who's obviously a heck of a ball player. So, and then all the pieces that you mentioned, I think we have a nice blend of continuity from last year's team. And blending in a lot of high-end talent, which on paper looks good. It's going to take a lot of work for those guys to, come together. And then there's still a couple pieces we're trying to add to give ourselves, some depth and address a couple issues that we haven't been able to address. But, in terms of excitement, yeah, I think extremely excited, especially – I'm operating a little bit more from a level of confidence, having a little bit more familiarity with what we're walking into, whereas last go-around it was, I had no idea what to expect. So that's given me a lot of, confidence, here in this offseason.
When you bring in players, and every coach in college is dealing with this with the current landscape, you're going to turn over a large amount of your roster every year and bring in a bunch of players courtesy of the transfer portal. How difficult is it to set a culture when there's so much transition and telling guys, all right, ready, have chemistry, ready, go? I mean, I got to imagine there's still, regardless of how great you are on paper and the accolades you've been and what you've been able to accomplish before, there's still that team building element. And how difficult is that to do in this day and age?
The good news for me is I don't have the previous way of doing it, like in my mind or in my wheelhouse, my previous head coaching stops. I was the head coach of 3 different G League teams, and when I was doing it back in those days, you were having turnover, every day, every week. Guys were coming and going, and so I think that gave me a good perspective on, keeping things simple. We have core principles here that we try to, run our program through. And, I think that helps us. It helped us this past year sort of establish our identity and, what were the non-negotiables. And I think anymore, you don't have time to get too far outside of just like what's most important. I think that sort of helped us fast track that. But, to your point, every year is a new year and every team's a new team. And so, sometimes that gelling process takes a little longer than others, and we'll see where this group ends up in that from that standpoint.
You mentioned Richie Saunders returning, and I know that there were a lot of rumors that were swirling about his eligibility and where he might go and what his decisions might be, NBA-wise or otherwise. How touch and go was it, Coach? Or did Richie Saunders come to you early and say, "Nah, I'm coming back"? Or were there moments where you had a little sweat on the brow, like, "Geez, we hoping we're going to get this guy back"?
No, I mean, I was in constant contact with Richie and understanding like what he was doing during that process, trying to gather as much information, as he could. I mean, this is a new, part of his career for him of navigating these kinds of things. So I think he was really trying to just educate himself the best that he could, in order to make a decision, for him and his wife. And I told him, I said, look, man, I kind of gave him my viewpoint of, from my experience in the NBA and where college is at right now. And, I felt like he was going to make a really smart decision, which he ultimately did. But, there was I was touch and go a little bit, but I did feel at the end of the day it would be in his best interest to come back. So, really happy for our fan base that he's back and can represent BYU at an extremely high level like he does.
Kevin Young, head coach of BYU basketball team, joining us right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. You mentioned AJ is going to get a lot of the headlines, but I think the addition of Rob Wright has been just absolutely could be just a gold mine for you. What went into getting him to BYU? Because I've watched him a lot at Baylor. I've been a big fan of his game and what he's been able to do. I think that's as good as get as anybody you've added this season.
Yeah, no question. I agree with you. I mean, he's, the ultimate floor general. He's got a track record of playing with, some really talented players and being able to lead, players of that caliber and teams of that caliber. And obviously we saw, firsthand at Marriott Center, he almost single-handedly beat us down a stretch of the game we played with them against those guys here at home. But just getting to know him and his family, I mean, tremendous young man. He's actually from Delaware, right around the corner where me and my wife lived when I was coaching for the Sixers G League team out there. So, in fact, I was telling him and his family, my middle son, Van, was probably the most excited guy because he was born right there in Rob's hometown, so he's fired up. So there's a lot of connectivity there, just getting to know the family. I think he'll fit in great, man. I think our style of play is what attracted him, to us, open, fast-paced game. Just our spacing, I think, allows him to, do what he does, which is get downhill, get to the rim, and we're going to explore other parts of his game as well. And it's a really exciting addition, given what else we have on the roster.
Scotty and I got to catch up with Charles Abuo for about 20 minutes last week. We bumped into him at a car dealership and had a great conversation with him. And he's just an incredible guy. Was an incredible player too, but a big part of your staff. And I'm just curious, with this staff with Voigt and Dunson and Chris Burgess, who Scotty and I know, and Coach Fanning and some of the others, do you largely have the same staff coming back? Are you losing some guys? Coach, how much do you have to reorganize what you do staff-wise?
Yeah, I think I'm anticipating, very little change, in that area. I think we'll have everybody back for the most part. Now, things happen, but I think, a lot of the college stuff has sort of transpired, and I've got some pro guys on my staff who, some of the pro stuff happens later in the game, whether it be overseas or even in the NBA world. But I would really encourage guys to take opportunities if they had them. But I think everyone's really excited about what we have going on here. especially given, the personnel that you just kind of went through and all the excitement that we're building. All my coaches and staff have been a huge part of helping us build this, and I think guys want to, stick around to see what we can do.
So I don't want to get into, some of the other topics in regards to NIL and all that other stuff, but when you are building a locker and you've got a culture, and sometimes it's very public what guys are getting, sometimes those numbers can be exaggerated greatly, but when you're dealing with a locker room of guys at different numbers at different levels, how do you try to make sure that everybody stays on the same page and it doesn't become an issue in that locker room?
That's an interesting topic, because for me, coming in from the NBA side, like that's rare. I've never in my years in the NBA ever had that be an issue, right? It's just like people know what people make, and there's levels to it, and that's just what it is. And so I think early days of NIL, it was my understanding that there was a lot of, it's got to be even across the board, this, that. I think there's a market value, and I think that there are on the pro side, and I think that's starting to, permeate college sports in general. And I think it's a space that people just have to get more comfortable navigating. I can tell you last year it never came up once in our locker room. I'm not anticipating it being an issue with us. I think our guys, and I think just in general, like guys want to win. We try to. We're not better than any other team in terms of trying to bring the good guys in. Everybody wants good guys, but we make it a point to really do our due diligence about who we're bringing into our locker room. And last year that was really a recipe for a lot of our success, and we're trying to not get too far away from that. This go around. And like I said, I think it's an area of college athletics that I think will become more the norm as this thing moves forward, and people just have to, learn how to sort of operate, given the different salary ranges and so forth. I mean, I could keep going on and on. I mean, it's no difference in business, right?
Yeah.
You leave school and, managers make more than the people below them, and so there's a pecking order, and that's just kind of how life works. And, these kids are obviously getting a fast track in that.
What I think is fascinating, Coach, and I watched your staff and you make some really good decisions throughout the year, but what I think is interesting and probably a fascinating study is, you're going to hit on a few and you'll probably miss on a few with the NIL deals and dollars that are spent, but being able to make a decision, like for instance, the way Moat Mag finished the season, it was evident you made the right choice. He's the right starter. He's the right minutes. He was just such a great piece to the back end of the push of that season. Are you able to make those decisions and kind of just put the dollars and cents aside and just say, no, we're going to play the best? Or is there pressures to play the money in college?
I don't think so. No, I think in the pros it was interesting because some of the teams I worked for, there was pressure with that, and there was other places where it was like, nah, we're just going to play who else is win, And so do I think that ends up being I don't feel that here at BYU. I think other places there could potentially be scenarios where that comes into play. But no, I mean, that's what's hard about coaching, right? Especially if you have decent depth. Like, you have to make hard decisions on who's getting the minutes. It's one of the things that keeps me up at night as a head coach. It's those decisions rest on me and me alone. And so there's, a lot that comes with that. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And you just hope that you can cultivate, a culture of buy-in, of togetherness, of team. And sometimes that goes a certain guy's way and sometimes it doesn't. I was really proud of the way our entire group last year handled that. Because it's not easy to navigate, and I think it is probably harder and harder as the NIL becomes more of a thing.
So now you've got a year under your belt. Sometimes when coaches get a new job, they just kind of have to throw a schedule together as fast as they can because they're up against it a little bit. Now that you've had a year, and you're in the national news with your recruits and what you've been able to do last year as well, I'm sure that offers some opportunities. In the NBA, you know who you're going to play and you know how many times you're going to play. You get to set that a little bit more in your non-conference schedule. So what's your philosophy on that in showcasing what should be a very talented team, but also making sure that you're playing your best basketball going into Big 12 play.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big learning curve for me last year. I mean, most of the schedule last year was set. We added maybe only a handful of games. But Chris Burgess, handles a lot of that stuff for me. He's got a real good, feel for it. That being said, this go around, we're definitely beefing up the schedule. I thought that was a mistake from last year where we didn't have a ton of tests going into Big 12 play, which I think one of the reasons why, we didn't start out great. So we're definitely trying to, push ourselves a lot harder in the non-conference. Plus, I think it helps us, build up the resume for the tournament, especially with 2 less Big 12 games this year, going from 20 to 18, gives us a little bit more, reason to play a tougher non-conference schedule. But there's a lot that goes into that, right? And that's something I'm learning about, and learned a lot this past year.
Last thing for me, Coach, what's Dybantsa like? What kind of kid is he? Like, what makes him tick, and what made your relationship click with him?
Yeah, he's a basketball junkie. That's probably where our relationship really was founded on. We talk NBA all the time. Texting back and forth about different players and the matchups, and now obviously the playoffs. And for as much attention that he gets as a player, he's a grounded young man. He's really easy to talk to. He's a fun-loving guy. I think his teammates like being around him. And sometimes when you get that level of public attention, like I don't know if everyone sees the real individual, right? And I think that the more I've been around him, he's a joy to be around, and I think everybody will really like obviously watching him play, but I think his personality will really come to light as well.
Coach, appreciate your time. Congratulations on a great season, and look forward to catching up with you down the line.
Big congrats.
Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
You got it. Kevin Young, head coach, BYU men's basketball team, right here on 97.5, the EKSL Sports Zone.